Okay, these operating systems of these headsets sets are now on version 64, which
Yeah,
is
I updated everything
which is
a
cool.
week ago.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I was about to have a bit of a pitch for Dino and how they keep on rolling out features, because what they've done is they've found that this Dino deploy system they've got
Uh,
matches strangely well with the API designed for browsers,
yeah.
because in browsers, I mean, I don't know, from my point of view, the web's been getting really cool over the last 2 to 3 years, because the standards body that puts out the spec for JavaScript and the web has been rolling out cooler and cooler new features. Um, Mostly because they made a change to how imports work. So they sort of gave it first class support for all this modern stuff. But a
Mm.
good example of where Deno's paradigm fits well is that in web browsers you have an API called the cache, where you can
Mm-hmm.
actively manage um, lightweight stored cached information that's shared between. It can be shared between domains, so subdomains on the same base URL, I'm pretty sure, but
Mm-hmm.
definitely you can share between web workers, because one of the big
Mm-hmm.
things with the web is they've enabled all this multi-threaded type of stuff so that browsers can do more processing. But
Mm.
if you make multi-threading work well for, you know, 2 or 3 threads, then a
Mm-hmm.
deploy is saying, well, therefore
Mm-hmm.
it works good for unlimited threads. And so one of the features they've added is called the edge cache, which I don't know if it's like a play on words or whatever, but it's they use the exact web API, so it's this code will run in the browser for opening up a cache, but
Mm.
what it is this cache that's available to any other isolate running in the same data center.
Oh, right.
So
Okay.
right, so it's like this big
Right.
ass
Okay.
fucking, yeah,
That's
and
cool.
they give you microsecond level read latency with multi gigabytes per second of write throughput.
And that's presumably that's best effort, but even in best effort, that's
Yeah. So with the trade off as being best effort, consistency, and
oh, there it is.
durability. Yeah,
There it
yeah.
is. Yeah.
Because it works. It gives the same guarantees as what the web browser cache is. The web browser cache is like, it's most likely going to be there when you ask for it, but don't bank on it.
Mm.
And
Mm.
so, um, where I've leveraged that for us is that we have, I found, because there is an aspect of Git that is purely hash based,
Mm-hmm.
that fits great in the cache, because you're like, well, if it is in the cache, it's definitely right. Like there's no
Yeah.
worry about is it stale or is it outdated or superseded, because it's a hash based piece of data. Like,
Yeah.
I get it. I check the hash. I'm like, it's all good. That's what I wanted. Thank you. And so
Yeah.
um, that's a great fit for us. And it's also a great offering from Deno, that they can sort of make the web look like this supercomputer. Um, and another one where they did the same thing is called a broadcast channel, because a broadcast channel is a channel that's used to send messages to all the web workers that are all working on a specific web page. They made it work to be able to share messages between your global application. So if I
All right. Yeah.
have an
It's
isolate in Australia,
yeah.
um, you know, and where I use this is I just want to, because I've been like suffering and no one cares, I just want to take this moment to sort of explain what I've been working on for the last little bit. Um, the the issue is that, oh dear, oh, this actually, I don't know what I was doing here, but this fits quite well. Um,
Mm.
this image,
Mm. Which image? You know. Oh yeah,
this,
this one. Ah,
yeah.
right. Yep. Yep.
So if this is Australia and this is Virginia, which in the course of my research, I found out that Virginia houses 35% of the hyperscale data center market for the world.
They must have some big power stations out there.
Yeah. And so the issue, because I moved to this new model of Git on a KV store, the new problem I had was that the browsers in New Zealand, it gets routed to the isolate in Australia for nice quick latency. The database is in Virginia. That's about 400 milliseconds away. And because there's now a bunch of little reads and little writes, and in particular, one of the downsides of the Git structure is that if you know the Git commit and you want to get a file, even if the file is in the root, you have to go, give me the commit, wait, give me the hash, give me the directory of the root that's pointed to by the commit,
does it
wait,
and then chats back.
you have to go back and forth. So you have to go like this, right? And so that's where some, in my opinion, unsatisfactory latency was coming from, because it could turn what on my machine was a 60 millisecond job to a 3-second job because of this amplification there, right? And so then the trick became, well, okay, so you want to queue up you want to know what I want, but I need to now move the execution to West Virginia, run it, and then get it back. And then databases don't really do that. So
Well, they do it by locking and hampering the whole thing.
Well, they don't.
Waiting on it.
No. I mean something different. They don't let you take a bunch of work, move it to somewhere, and then do it, and then come back.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's what I needed to do, and it was the coming back that was kind of a pain, because Dino's got this great feature where you can watch keys, so you can be triggered when a key changes. But do I want to ship the work off, do the work, write to the database, wait for the watcher over in Australia? There was a lot of options I considered, but in the end, I settled on the broadcast channel because it lets me fire up a message bus, basically. So I send the work off to Virginia using the queue, because that's how everything works in our system. And then to get the message back, I send a broadcast message that the original isolate in Australia is listening for, using the web API of Broadcast Channel, which was designed and tested for in-between web workers that Dino has made work for the global instance of your app, no matter where the isolate is running. So I just wanted to mention that, because I think that's pretty cool how they found all these. It's almost like the web specification is starting to define programming itself, and Dino has found that they can implement web standards at global data center scale, and it works.
It's kind of cool, isn't it?
It's very cool.
Yeah.
It's very, very cool.
And I think I read further up, it's the first back, so nearest data center, or lowest latency data center to the client.
That's how all of it works. So and that is where the issue comes, because that's where that ping pong issue comes from. So how things work, the way I've got it running now for us, is that the browser comes to the nearest data center for great latency. The data center then, when it has work to do, sends things, uses the queue to send a message. The queue always gets processed in West Virginia, and so the queue pops a message off, does a bunch of work, and then broadcasts back this result. And so in that way, I was able to keep the latency very low for the database, because it's in the same data center. And I also think it's next to GitHub, and it's next to OpenAI, because when it's running on the queue, it's really quick. And then it broadcasts it back. So the local isolate gives the user very good, basically, access to the system, but it still has some geographical restrictions to go, like, handling getting to
Yeah, but
Virginia.
the heavy lifting is done where it's fastest.
The heavy lifting is done where it's dirty fast, like
Yeah,
dirty fast.
that's nice.
Um,
That is
yeah,
nice.
and
I like that. I like that.
yeah, the thing that I love most about Deno's KV is the fact that it's got this Q in it, but this Q can be treated as part of the atomics. So you can say, I want to write this commit for Git, this Git commit that I made. Only if that is atomically successful, then trigger off all this execution and message passing and put all these other messages on the queue, so that I can guarantee that only if the atomic guarantee is held will the fan out occur,
Uh-huh.
which is probably the most beautiful things I've seen anyone do in a while.
These guys got to
Yeah.
make money, aren't they? Yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah. But it's great for us because, man, it saves so much hassle, so much hassle. Right. So I want to show you the tests running
Mm-hmm.
on the system here. This is the greatly exaggerated thingammy bobby. There we go. There we go. Oh, now it's too small to read numbers. Whatever.
No, I can't
So
see anything yet. Oh.
yeah, I know. So I'm gonna run the. Ah, fuck! I'm doing that thing again. No, I didn't actually.
Oh.
Just boom it out.
There
Okay,
we go.
so yeah, there we go. So this is gonna run. I made a thing called the Guts. It's the Grand Unified Test Suite, and what it does is it runs the same set of tests locally for the browser and can test against the cloud, and it's all. I just write the tests, and then it gets automatically run against all these different platforms. This is the set of tests this is the test running against the cloud deployment. So the times and the latencies you can see, there's room for tuning here. Like, this is the clone. That was 8 seconds to clone. That's not great, but it was 700 milliseconds to do the clone once it got to the queue. So there's a bunch of tuning I can do, but in general, it's working pretty good because this 8 seconds includes cleanup time to make sure that there's no debris left over from previous tests. This was a hard one here. This is 14 seconds, but it processed 20 independent actions that were flooded into it.
What's
So
hogging? Resource
hogging.
hogging. As
Yeah,
in...
it's just trying to do big load.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Probably don't need to know more detail on that, but yeah.
The fact that these work,
heavy lifting. Yeah.
heavy lifting, yeah, the fact that these work is the main thing. So this is the analytics dashboard that's running while these tests are going. And this was the main one that was that big issue, was that it was in the millions, but now it's like, to run those heavy tests is only like, 1,000 or so.
Nice.
And then the queue, like you can see, I've been doing quite a bit today, but 107,000 messages on the queue is really not that much. Like, this test that we just did there is like, 100 messages on the queue, which is pretty light, all things considered. So, yeah, so that's basically all the tests running against the cloud, all passing except for this one. I've skipped the parallel resource hogging one. I'll get to that next, but that's where we're at. So it's nice and stable. I still got some poking around to do, of course, but generally speaking, It works.
That's
So
kind of cool.
yeah, and it works with accounts. So this is running in. I'm using the super user account because I like to live dangerously, but it is built to. The fact that it supports the super user account implies that supporting other accounts is fairly trivial
Yeah.
too. So the accounts part is built into it now. The chattering branches has been solved as well. Like I've actually done a lot, quite a lot of work. um, um, I don't know if my closed task column will show up, my done column, but yeah, I have done a lot of stuff lately. Um, so yeah, it's it's pretty much. I wouldn't say good to go because I need to like just poke at it more, but it's not. There's nothing major anymore. Like it's. I don't know if that's makes
Yes.
sense or is helpful, but it's like this is the thing. Like it's
Right.
doing
There's no
the
major
thing.
blockers, right? There's
No,
no conceptual motherfucks.
there's no architectural issues. It's
Yeah.
just implementation tuning, and so far so good for the outlook. For like the big loads, and so where I'm trying to get to is do the 10,000 customer load
Mm-hmm.
on the CRM, and then if it does all that, it's pretty much just plain text AI from here on in, really.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Well, this is where I start to spank it because of the traffic around
Oh
everything.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, I want to put some billion before you go too wild on it, because
Yeah.
it'll it can it doesn't care about, like, it can really burn credits. So
It does, and I've been looking at the route down is going to be multimodal. We could probably, spin up one of these open source ones and just pay a server as opposed to pay tokens. Some of these open source ones, if you go multi-bot, are actually getting better results on
right,
benchmarks than four.
really
Yeah,
better
yeah,
than four.
but it's got to be because you're embedding the kind of intuition inside of the
Right,
structure of your bot swarm. So if you know what you're
right.
asking for and you reduce it each bot down to effectively a function call, and that function call you can test as within the capabilities of a lesser model,
Mm,
then string them all together, you get ultimately better results. Instead of
okay.
asking one big black box, you're asking lots of small black boxes to do something simpler, and then you're responsible for chaining them all together. Um,
Mm.
it's,
Well, that's promising.
it's really the whole agentic approach. I think is definitely right because it also scales. It doesn't matter because 6 months from now, four is going to be old news. And then five and Gemini 2, 3, 4, whatever.
Mm,
You're also going to want to use the cheaper model when necessary, and also by stringing them together, you have more control over what they're doing. Um,
right. Okay.
right. So,
Oh, well, over
should I
to you,
explain?
buddy.
Yeah, should I explain my the weirdness of uh, trying to figure out Martin Luther King's
Yeah. So
speech?
when you were trying to get it
Yeah.
assessed, like, what's
Right.
the baseline
Here's
and
here's
why?
the thing.
Why do
Here's
you
the
care?
thing. Here's the thing. So, if we are to allow, can you give me a second? I'm going to get my notes. I've got written notes over here. A sec. I might go. I'm going to. Right. Am I still in the room? Hey, still in the room.
Yep.
Excellent.
Hey, Benny.
Okay, so what we're trying to do is to not define. Well, we've got the n-dimensional matrix space, which seems to work. I've run a few tests on that. It does actually allow you to leisure with. Allow you to measure whatever you want, so long as you've got some kind of internal idea of relative magnitude, which is what is internal. Found all this to 100. It's 0. It's not it's applicable. It's 1 to 100, and leave the NL to decide what it does with that. So the steps I went through were okay. Given this speech, what are the right things to quantify it with? And I had innovation, grammar, syntax, all that kind of thing. Great. So now you've got an idea of the relative weight of the entire thing. You can go in for each paragraph.
Yeah, but what are you comparing it against?
Well, no, this is the thing. I'll go. It might take a few minutes to go through all this. So that's kind of base level. So that is if you have a unit, pretty content that we can say if that unit is built up of a whole bunch of helps, we can work out what the relative worth is of each of the helps, and then apply.
Well, it didn't look like that because the way you were showing it in the Martin Luther King thing was, it was just, is it good or not? But that's not. That doesn't.
Right. So
this doesn't give us anything.
No, this is the next step. So if you are to leave NLs to decide what's good, okay, then it's going to come up with something like this. The next step is you tell it what's good. Okay, so I could give it the dimensions. I could give it the relative weights. Fine. I could just, invent those and do a pass through that based on what I care about. Fine. Okay, so then we get the relative weights and so on. Now, the thing is, how do you calibrate it? What do you calibrate it against? If we were to go down the n-dimensional impact route, where we don't care, all we've got is this history of who's done what, and at any point we can reassess. It's like, well, what's your yardstick for reassessing at any point? So you can get the bot to do it, fine, which is what I did here. I could dictate it, fine. You'd have similar results, but, who knows whether I'm right or not. It doesn't really matter in terms of any kind of dispersal event until there's some kind of calibration. Now, the calibration could be one of two things, I think. The first one is comparing one-to-one, pairwise, and then stack ranking. Fine, you can do that. But the calibration really only comes really interesting if there is a kind of universal quantity for the thing that each of the qualities that you're measuring against. Now, the problem with that, and this is what we really want to drill down to, we're saying that we want n-dimensional space where we're not making any kind of quality assessments until the point of observation. Someone looks at it and goes, okay, here's what it is. Now, if you do that, sure, you can do it internally. If you want to do it externally, you have to either compare it with something else, which is better, or compare it against some kind of absolute. And when you're talking about an absolute, what are the absolutes? What's the absolute for, ethical and moral appeal? There is none if we allow NL.
Okay. So I think what I've been picturing all this time is that impact is this n-dimensional set of vectors, right? That's what we're saying. Where
whether it's created on the fly by the bot or by me doesn't really matter. But yeah, it's n-dimensional.
Right. Well, it does matter because one of the things that we're driving towards in the Dreamcatcher is a shared a cohesion of everyone's kind of okay with this is impact space. These are the vectors. That's where we
Um,
want to get to with the social network.
yes. So there's a
Yeah.
convergence here. So the reason I chose Martin Luther King is,
Can you give me? Can you please let me finish? I haven't
oh yeah,
got to my
sorry.
point.
Sorry.
So we have to get to. Technically, we can do n-dimensional whatever, but socially, we have to get to a set of vectors that everyone is comfortable working with. Now, in my mind, I think that there's about 30 because
You made that.
not important now.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I'm I made it up based on how I think about it because 30 is sort of more than you can comprehend without sitting down and looking at it. And there's an element of, if you just glance over it and you're like, all these things that you're like, that's important. Yep, 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 that's it. Yep, yep. And then suddenly it's like a little bit too much for your brain and you're like, that's probably fine. Like it's
Mhm.
that kind of a place we want to get to. So, in dimensional impact and very quickly we should actually have a working scorecard to where where we actually say what those dimensions are for once. But
Yeah.
um, what we got to get to between everyone is saying that we loosely agree that this is what vector the vectors are, and the key thing that the impact assessment is relative to the person's whole consumption, because a jitter is still a component of everything that person did that day. And so the impact is always in in those vectors in proportion to that person's whole day.
Yeah, but that doesn't get around the need to calibrate because you could have helps being used on 1,000 different jitters with 1,000 different what that person's done that day. Without calibration, you can't compare them. You're still back on the base case of you compare internally with the calibration of what that person's done today. That's fine.
I, I don't think
But
it needs to be calibrated between all the helps. It's really just about saying that to let's take you for Mr. Maxwell, the his the Dreamcatcher as a whole had this impact on him for him today, and the impact is in these dimensions. And then to break that up between all the jitters he used is, mechanical. And then, as we know, we've got a plan for breaking the jitters down to distribute amongst all the helps.
okay, so that works in itself. I'm not sure it moves the peanut on in this one because if
I
you
start to suspect this peanut, in the politest possible way, might not matter, and I'm actually on the hunt for things to avoid. This is what I'm looking for, things to
okay,
avoid, and this
all right.
sounds like one of them.
Okay, so let me see where that. Right. Let's go to what actually matters now. A couple of calls. Before I was talking about calibrating against some kind of hard cash or reputation or karma score or whatever you want to quantify it
So, what is it that you're trying to calibrate?
with. Say if I was to take the good doctor's speech and saying, I want to know how much this impact was on legislation in the US, because that is, should
So,
be
you want to
answered.
say what is the impact of Martin Luther King's speech on legislation in
Right,
the United States?
right. Now, we can quantify that, sure. We can look at the time series legislation that NNL broadly agrees with his thesis here. and
Mm.
we can apply that to them. Now, I've by backdoor there, I've already added a quantity number of laws passed, and then you can go down the route and so on. But it does require, at some point, a quantification in order to make sense, except for one use case where you want to look at the example last time with the boat with the billionaire's son. You see the billionaire's son. Great. Um, you can easily go through the system that is the example here and just say, well, I'm going to add in additional information after the fact, and it's like, well, actually, the initial impact I saved a life, but actually it went on that he solved cancer. Blah blah.
Yeah, because key to the system is that as more information is available, the
Right,
impact can be recalculated at every point.
right,
And
right,
it's crucial to note that the consequences of impact does not go on forever. The Earth is for more or less, a closed system,
right. Well,
and
it's
it
in
it will eventually be filled with this
well,
awareness.
yeah, it's diluted by we've already got that because we have the provenance as things are built on and so on. That event of saving the guy in the boat will be diluted by other things that also enable them to solve cancer. So we've got that, but what that is a qualitative view on okay, so this event, this act had this impact. And when I say this impact, I mean I care about, in this case, what the impact was on legislation. I haven't looked at the other ones, for example, the impact on innovation or, cultural and global resonance, or there's a number of other things. So when I look at it, now this is just one of three, and this is the wooliest one. So forgive me for a second, we do get into harder things. I think what we can do is what was the impact of you creating this thing, given everything that we knew at the time and everything we've learned since then, based on an n-dimensional space where you can filter what you care about. Maybe I don't care about whether he added any words to the lexicon of the English language. Maybe I do, but you can filter and see the impact. Now that's woolly. Really come that really comes down to what the reputation is, and maybe we could weight those. Maybe we can combine those. Now, really, where it comes down to though is what's the earthing event. So at some point, now the this speech thing is the worst case. If we bring it back to software, it's like it's used, okay, and then you can get what does use mean. Maybe it's paid for, maybe there's knock-on events, maybe it's combined into multiple different distributions which are used. Each of those have pay events, but those are all quantifiable, and that's relatively easy to do. But a bit like you don't know the value of a share until someone pays for it. We need some kind of event where someone does something in order to earth it to something quantifiable.
Yeah, but isn't that the consumption, the act of consumption?
Well, the act of consumption doesn't necessarily imply any, monetary exchange. It could do, probably does.
No, 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 no. Listen, that's crucial to the part of what our system has to do is be able to tell you, even if you don't have money, it needs to tell you roughly what you owe. And it needs to
Right.
do that in a holistic way where it looks at, it's like, well, here's everything I know about you, and I'm guessing you have this much money because we need to create this incentive for people to upload their data because it's like, well, we worked out that you owe this guy $5, but that's because we guessed how much money you have. If you're really like, oh no, no, actually, I don't have any money, well, assert that, say it. We need to create that need for people to want to put their data in the system. The more data, the better.
Yeah, yeah,
Eh,
yeah. So
right
that's the
now,
that's
it's a
the
critical step that we take the responsibility of calculating how much we think someone owes someone else. That's what drives the whole system forwards.
Yes, I agree. And let me bring my screen up here. So under the disputing, okay, so right, this is to calculate what portion of the benefit. I've not said what the benefit is. It can be anything, but it needs to be something quantifiable and divisible. And then when you've got that, record the fact, and that's a payday, let's call it.
Yeah.
Now, we can recalculate in the future and saying you should have been paid more or you got overpaid.
So I want to just make sure that we understand or agree that here you can end up in debt,
Oh yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like our
absolutely.
system will tell you you got about $500 worth of value today. You paid $2. You owe
Yeah,
X. And you're
exactly,
allowed to tick that forwards as long as you feel comfortable. But
exactly.
our system needs to tell you what is the fair price that you should have paid.
Yeah, exactly. So you got record the fact of the distribution of a benefit, and then at any point you can be reassessed on an event. The attribution says, well, actually, this is what you really should have had.
Hmm.
Now, it's highly unlikely you've got actually what you deserve. You're probably going to have got
Yeah,
less
but
or
at the very least, you're going to get an AI swarm that's been largely agreed to by some kind of consensus that says, yeah, mate, you're owed this
yeah,
much.
exactly,
And that's
exactly.
something. That's something. It's
Yeah,
something important.
yeah, exactly. So there's three levels of assessment. You could assess it on request based on a filter and saying, um, give me your assessment of the impact of Dr. King's speech. Fine. Okay. Now, give me how much money that it actually generated, or let's give a benefits. You know, how much real estate, or it doesn't matter. But that benefit is the important
Mm,
thing. Without that
right.
benefit,
Right.
there's no calibration to the outside
Yeah.
world.
So what's the problem here? Like this is something that we had agreed on for a long time. That
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
yeah.
There's no problem.
There's no
There's
problem.
no
Okay.
no 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 no. There's
It
no.
sounds like a
There's a head
problem.
scratcher. No, there's a head scratcher because
How is that not a problem?
no, this
What?
part's good. I'm happy with this part. Right.
Okay. The head
The question
scratcher is
the,
what?
the question is at the point of attributing, what we've got is a history that can be
Right.
used to assess the impact. Right. Impact is not the same as you getting paid for it. The impact, the
Correct.
dimensions we're not defining, we're allowing NL to define based on either itself or a filter and what it cares about.
So getting paid is the step that comes after calculating impact, and getting paid is proportional to impact, but not guaranteed to be correlated in any way.
Yes, because some of these impacts we don't necessarily want to directly relate to a benefit. Perhaps we can. I mean,
We want to relate.
sorry, go
What just
on.
happened?
Oh, I got a phone call. I just
Uh,
muted.
we want to relate them as much as we can to things that get traded. Money's a good one, and yeah, we
Yeah, it
don't want to leave them
could be
hanging on purpose. Like,
could be any benefit that's quantifiable, right?
yeah,
Because as soon as the reason it needs to be quantifiable because it needs to be divisible because we're dispersing.
it doesn't need to be divisible, but it does need to be definable, because you can send someone a non-divisible benefit, like a
Uh,
life debt, or
yeah, sure, but how do we then take into account the hierarchy of contributions about? So the guy at the top gets this non-divisible benefit, but nobody else
yeah,
does.
you can. Um, that's a good point. The thing can stay. So I dealt with this problem in NFT land, with things like the QA medallion and all that. you can end up in a position where you can all own a portion of an indivisible thing.
Right,
And
but that
what that
all that
means
means
is
is sorry, go on. Sorry.
when revenue hits it, you all just get your split. But
Oh,
you can't,
yeah.
you
But
can't.
that's really saying it's not indivisible, but there's a thing that a divisible allocation refers to. So
Oh,
yeah,
right, like a wrapper,
yeah,
a tokenization wrapper that goes
yeah,
around everything.
yeah. Which is
Yeah.
perfectly fine, perfectly fine.
Okay. 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 Cool.
So this is the key. Is like, okay, is there a benefit? Is the benefit quantifiable and divisible, potentially with a wrapper? In which case you can disperse it, and then at any point you can recall the attribution and saying, have you been overpaid or underpaid, based on what that benefit was at the given the history, but also given what we've learned in the future.
Yep. So what's the head scratcher?
The head scratcher is whether we should go into non quantifiable aspects or whether we should just ignore that. So,
What's an example of a non-quantifiable aspect?
I saved someone's life and they're very happy about that, and their wife
How is
was.
that not quantifiable?
Um, because maybe he's where's the quantifiable benefit that I get in transaction for doing that?
We create it. It's called I saved your life.
Right. Okay.
It's
So
similar
you
to all the other life-saving medallions, but it's unique to this person.
right. So you've just created. And I think this is where this is where I think we should go. Um, you've just created an item, a token,
An
one.
NFT. I just
Yep.
made a unique,
And
non-fungible
right. Right.
item.
And like we just said, that NFT can be divided up based on who's owed what, and so everyone has a little call on saving a life.
Yep. Okay, I grant you that.
Grand. Okay. Good.
What's the head
Um,
scratcher?
no, the head scratcher is how far back do we go, or do we just do everything in
We go
NFTs?
to the limits of observable of the observable universe. That's
Right.
the
Okay.
point of this system, because there's a time coming. It's upon us now. There's a time coming where the data entry required to do these kinds of deep lookups are not. They're going to be done by machine. The machines now can observe and data entry stuff. We are
I,
going to illuminate everything that ever happened as much as anyone can ever know. And that's coming. We're not going to stop until it's all online, and we have machines that can do it faster than
yeah.
all of us put together.
I agree. So let's take an example. The cultural and global resonance of Dr. King's speech. Fine. Okay. Um, do we issue an NFT for cultural
Yeah.
and global resonance? How does that work? Because we don't know at the point it came out.
Okay. So I think part of what you're. Do you want to hide maybe
Yes.
your list there? Because
Yeah.
you can. I mean, can't
I
you
don't actually have
shunt
anything
that?
interesting. I don't have anything interesting. I don't mind.
Okay. All right. Well, it just felt a bit weird, but that's cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I mean, I wanted the screen. I just didn't want the.
Okay. Well, let me stop and then I'll put it onto something a bit more.
Can you not just hide the column that has everyone's chats in it? Or does
Uh,
the UI not let you do that? Or could you just drag it so that bit's off the screen?
yeah, I think it'll be easier
Oh,
if I
you
just
got like a
paste it. Yeah.
you got a crack book and they don't do that sort of thing, right?
Boom.
Boom, 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 boom.
Yeah, there you go. Right, okay, back in the room.
Okay.
Right. Okay. So yeah, it's if we take that as an example, which is why I was looking at this.
Okay, yeah, that's a good example. That all right. So the issue there then, cultural significance,
Yeah.
is that isn't enough data. So you could definitely make an NFT that represented the cultural significance of your deed, and you could you don't need to describe it as a percentage or a number. You can just be, it's a thing. It's like a collection of pebbles. Cultural significance or culture is made up of this vast sea of little pebbles, each one unique, and all that. So you don't need to melt them all together and make sure they're all homogeneous. You can still have them be separate and indivisible, distinguishable, non-fungible.
And also incomparable. So you can't
Yeah,
compare
yeah,
one
yeah, yeah.
item to another.
And then the comparison is sort of what, if you want to do more comparisons, you're free to, but the Dreamcatcher stops at the point of um, we agree that it's incomparable.
Yeah,
Like there are it the Dreamcatcher tries to preserve um, uniqueness or individuality of event and contribution. It makes them comparable insofar as they have similar dimensions and they're in the same space, but it always tries to hold on to the uniqueness of what that thing was, because we as humans with highly restrictive information systems up to this point in time have always preferred to delete data by saying things are fungible.
yeah,
And
yeah,
we now are entering an age where we no longer need to do that, and we should be embracing that.
yeah, yeah. So the way I've approached that is talking about events. So an observation event. Um, so what I'm saying by that is we've got all the history, all the data at any point in the future, um, and that data goes past the event. So what happened after, as well as what happened before.
Yep.
You can observe, and then
Right.
on any n-dimensional space that you care about, you can get some kind of report about relatively who contributed to it.
Yep.
Um,
Yep. So if you pay for that and it was run on a certified system or in a certified way, that moves the peanut forwards and revenue will flow through that,
right,
because
but
these calculations are non-free, and so we rely on people running those calculations periodically to update them.
uh, um, yes to the helps that were required in order to run the observation. Yeah, absolutely. Um, but nothing is disputed based on someone simply observing, saying what was the impact of this.
No.
Praise and blame in the
If you
future.
use the Dreamcatcher's impact assessment bot swamp,
Mm.
then it doesn't matter who ran it, so long as it was run in a certified way. And if you move the wavefront forwards, or expanded the awareness, then we'll start using it because
Um,
it's legit.
yeah, well, the observation event itself is recorded
I think
in
I think
contribution.
what I'm talking about as an observation event is a rerunning or a execution of the attribution calculating system. And as we've discovered so far, or seen so far, the amount of AI tokens you need to burn to run that to ground for everything is insurmountable. And so we rely on people who are interested in refining or rerunning an attribution calculation to pay for the credits to do so. That's what the
Um,
system's built upon.
yeah,
We have
yeah, yeah,
we don't want to pay for that ourselves. Like,
yeah, yeah.
sure.
It's up to the person who requests this
Yeah,
generates
yeah. And
efforts.
that to me, that's an observation event, is when someone looks at something and goes, rerun that for me, or run that next node through to completion for me. And that's what grows the system, because someone has to pay for all that calculation.
Yeah, yeah,
When they run it using our certified tools, they will start to get paid for usage of that new attribution calculation, because we don't want to rerun it every time. We just run it we just use the last generated version.
Yeah. No, absolutely fine with that.
Okay. I'm
So
still feeling like there was a head scratcher you were trying to get across to me that I'm not seeing.
okay.
Can you help
Um,
me
well,
see?
let's go back to. Uh,
Have I said anything that you disagree with so far?
no. This is
But at the same time, I feel like I haven't said anything new either. So
uh,
that leaves us in a
well,
weird.
it's no. Hey man, I've created an artifact here which is actually quite complete and coherent. What we're doing is testing the limits of it by running past, Martin Luther King. Now, okay, so if we were to talk about distribution, okay, we've already established that distribution requires a benefit. That benefit could be anything and could be wrapped and dispersed on shares or whatever,
Okay,
or it could
so
be
I
straight
think that
cash and so on.
to refine that more, distribution should be a collection of NFTs that are represented by the actual things that happened, and then once you've done that, those um, those NFTs are used to disperse any divisible assets that were offered or put forwards to pay out to those NFTs. So
Yep.
if money
Yeah.
was put into it, then the money flows based on the NFT map.
Yeah. I've got a question about that one, but can you give me a second? There's a wasp
Sure,
in here. I'm going to get
a
out.
wasp in Scotland. Wasp. All right, you back?
Right. Yeah. So, share again. Okay. So my question is twofold, and it's rhetorical because I think I know what to do on this. But at what point are NFTs minted? Because you could have the contribution continuing on every millisecond. At what point do you create an NFT and then distribute that NFT in order to value that later on and maybe give some benefit? This is the tick I was mentioning the other day. Now, it could just be every
I think,
observation, for example.
well, for starters, I want to add the mechanism by which you can extend an already existing NFT. So each time you generate one, it doesn't have to be totally unique. It could be expanding one that came before. Like, if it's the first time something happened ever, then obviously that'll be a brand new NFT for that. But as more
Okay,
consumption comes in, you can be like, oh, actually, we're
so you can
gonna,
roll up. You can roll
you
up
can,
NFTs.
well, you can redefine them. They can change over time. They are dynamic. They don't have to be static. So
Um,
it's not like once you created it, that's the end. It's not. It's not immutable. It's immutable at that point in time, but as more information becomes apparent, the NFT changes shape, it changes bounds, it changes size.
okay. Um, so back to this first question, which is when. Okay, so let's refine it. The NFT is minted and then updated over time.
Hmm.
It needs to be updated on some additional information coming in, and also needs to be updated about what the state was, about why the NFT was minted, because
Yep.
otherwise it's just an
Yeah,
NFT.
yeah. So that's just the two heavy calculations we have are calculating the impact of the jitter and calculating the attribution of the jitter back to the components that were used to create it.
Right. Which is
Right.
that's the easy part. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so the NFTs can only be minted after those, as a result of those two steps. Those two steps are the process of minting NFTs.
Yes, but there's also what the NFTs are saying. So, for example, let's if we take NFT to be a medal for courage. We've chosen courage as the quantity or
So
the
courage
quality
is the
that we're
dimension.
right. And there's another one for politeness. Here's an NFT
Mm,
for politeness. So
right.
there is a quality judgment that each NFT needs in order to make sense of it. What is this medal for? It's for courage. It's for politeness. Fine. Now we can generate that share through some kind of lexicon of qualities that we agree with, perhaps,
Mm.
and then we'd have to define what we mean by those, and we could those are helps as well, and so we can update those as go on, or we could allow the bot to say, actually, I'm going to generate an NFT on this event. And events are another thing, based on greenness. Nobody's ever done a greenness, and so I'm going to, invent you a NFT, and we'll see, 1,000 years hence, maybe green is a really valuable thing, and so you're going to get benefit from that. So the filter by which you consider all this data is necessary. You need to decide what do I care about and why, and therefore why that NFT is there, and then you can get the distribution for it, and then you can build on it absolutely with new information and saying, well, actually, we're going to shovel around what the worth is. Overall NFT might go up and down in an absolute sense, and so on.
So the way I want to prefix this by saying I'm not 100% sure about this part of the system that we're talking about, which
Mm.
is how to mint NFTs during our calculation process.
Uh-huh.
But what I feel is that if this is the multidimensional representation of impact for a jitter,
Uh-huh.
then I think it's reasonable to say that if that same jitter or similar jitter gets used, then that's the same as just reusing this thing but amplifying it or multiplying it by the number of times it got used. So obviously it's more useful. But when the jitter stays more or less the same, the impact stays the same too, sort of. Sort of. Anyway,
Mm.
anyway, if I can just be granted that on credit, and I'll come back to it later.
Okay, all right. Yeah, skip
This
around that one.
thing,
Yeah.
to me, is a great NFT. This thing itself is like, hey, this represents the impact. And then, yes, you can subdivide it when you do the attribution portion. But I think this sparkle of impact, this is the NFT.
Yeah,
And
yeah, I love this. Yeah, this kind of multi-dimensional way of looking at this, I think is absolutely perfect.
yeah.
Um,
And so that's the thing. And you're like, we can show the provenance of how this was minted. These are actually quite expensive to mint because you got to do quite a bit of bot swarm work to be able to mint one of these. And they grow and they will have these little feathers at the edges because if it's similar enough, you don't, like you're just, it gets fuzzy around the edges because as it gets used 100,000 times, it gets used slightly differently. And so the overlay of all these usages cause this furriness around the outer edges, right? So
Yes. Now, this we take the minting of an NFT as an event. Let's just say every time someone pays for an observation event, um, it's minted. Uh,
Yeah, but minted doesn't mean created. It can mean refined. Like you can know that there's some new information that hasn't been included in the generation of this NFT, and you can pay for it to rerun to run and remint it using this new information.
yes, but there's another way of doing it as well, which would be let's say if these are medals, so you get the bronze medal, which uses all the information available of what's happened at that point of minting. Later on, time changes. You rerun it, and it's like, well, actually, this is a silver medal now. You really deserve more, and then that's disputed. The bronze is kind of assumed inside of the silver, right? Because if you've got silver, you've already got bronze, and likewise up through the chain of NFTs. So this is minting an NFT feels quite like a benefit, which is the distributing action we're talking about.
Well, this is the ledger in a way. It's a much more colorful and richer way of representing a ledger, so that when any of the dispersal happens, this is the thing that is used to direct that.
Yes, but you can generate any number of these depending on your observation event. I care about this now. There's a new NFT. I care about this. There's new NFT.
No,
This
no, no, no,
NFT
no,
cares
no,
about
no.
this.
So you can do that, but you would have gone and altered. You're not the Dreamcatcher anymore. To mint a Dreamcatcher NFT, you need to run the certified bot swarm.
Okay. All right. So that's the event, right? So
And the event, anytime there's anything new, which can be the bot swarm was upgraded, there's more information that's related to it. Um, GPT released a new version of their model. You can pay to rerun some or all of the information that contributes to this NFT, and it will change the NFT. The NFT is made up of layers upon layers upon layers of costly AI tokens that have been used to, in a certified way, build out its structure.
okay. Yep. That's fine. Now, there's let's talk about the event of its creation.
First
No,
time ever?
first time ever. Yeah.
Okay.
Now, what you want to do is you need to define what these, you know, sticky outy bits are.
Yeah. So
Now,
it would, over time, the very first one would be weak, and then as more repeat usage of it occurs, each time you reran the calculation, it would start to grow in definition, and some of the shape might change, and it would thicken up and all that.
yeah, no, that's cool. So that's let's call it the observation event. So every time it's run, you reassess.
Can we
Um,
call it something more than observation? I feel like observation implies I'm just standing back and looking, but whereas we mean
yeah.
something quite more than that. We are.
Uh, well, it could be minting event even.
But minting implies created for the first time as opposed to refining or reminting,
Okay.
depositing. I am it, to me, it's like how you see crystals form, or like silicon deposits. Like it puts a thin film down each time and grows the substrate up.
Yeah, yeah. What would you
Like
call
how
that?
stalactites
Effectively, what we're
work.
saying is who's who's paying for the update of this,
Any interested party is.
right? So you're probably right. Observations sounds quite passive, but it's some kind
Generation. What about generation?
of that sounds again like minting. It's like you generate something
Regeneration.
or updating or yeah, refining. Don't know. Okay, I'll think about that one, but I agree. But yes,
Grinding. Can we
yeah,
just run with grinding the NFT?
now the thing is, at each of these events
At
where
each
this event,
grind.
yeah, each grind, you need you need to know uh, what the magnitude and weighting is for each of these sticky out bits, because
Right.
it could be anything, right? And we want it to be anything. We don't want to remove any data whatsoever. So you're saying,
Right.
given everything we know, everything that's happened afterwards, um, we care about X, Y, Z, and so you got an
Yep.
X, you got Y, you got a Z, boom, there you go. Big
Yep.
question is how do we define what those that X, Y, and Z parameters are? Do we
Oh,
allow
that's what
it to?
no, that's what we went over 2 calls ago, which is the update mechanism for the bot swarm that generates these dimensions.
Uh, okay, so it's the bot swarm, which is what I did with the Martin Luther King there. It's the
We were
bot swarm that
calling
decides
it the
this.
branch master, which is the
Yeah,
one that decides when a proposed upgrade to the bot swarm is better or worse.
right. Yeah,
Right.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
So we're allowing a bot
So we're
swarm to decide
launching
what those are.
the dream catcher. The dream catcher is defined by that the most widely agreed and used bot swarm. And our
Um,
race or our job is to do everything in our power to make the fairest, fastest, cheapest way of generating these impact NFTs that everyone accepts as fair.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Which is what I did in that example. Started off saying, how would you, given this, how would you rate it? Um, I don't care what you're rating it on. Just give me some ratings, and it came back with social, political, cultural, global content,
Right.
etc.
So your ratings were dimensions,
Right.
right? And we would
And
represent them in this.
yeah, so given a dimension, this would be a magnitude and a relative weighting, which would give
Right.
you your vector, and therefore you could, if something else was assessed on exactly the same criteria, you could actually say what the relative weight was or what the relative value was, because you've used the same criteria to assess two things, so on. Now, the bot swarm is going to change each time. It's going to move on and so on, without some kind of guidance, some kind of dictionary of qualities that we care about, or it's going to decide greenness. Well, at the moment, I'm actually quite. I'm thinking this would be a good idea to allow it to just generate greenness, but that is part of that attribution. Is like, let's assess it with this quality that we hadn't thought about before. We've got all the information, and so on.
There are
But
so the way I've been picturing these things so far is that the vertical dimension is like we need to have an idea of goodness, and the so these things are going to look like a flax bush or a plant because most of them will be net positive, but you can make ones that are upside down where they're overwhelmingly negative, and most
yeah, sure.
most impacts have a sort of some negative and some positive, so they have sort of they look like a flax bush plus some roots, where the roots are like the carbon output or the benefits it took from slavery or things like that. And so these things you kind of want rootless plants where possible, but in reality, you definitely don't want like all roots and no tree. But these are yeah, that's
But again, at the point of creation, um, you need to tell the bot what you care about,
yeah,
or
but that's yeah,
you need to allow the bot just to, yeah, what do you care about?
no, like that's what you and I have to make is the seed that picks the first set of dimensions. I don't think it's a hard task. I think it's a task that takes iterating, but the bots know every single vector that any human knows. They know them all.
Yeah, that's the problem. There's like a very very large, probably not infinite
Right,
number.
right. And so we need to so long as we can demonstrate how we got to the dimensions that we started with, and we've got a process in place for allowing additional um, dimensions to be added, whereby it's bot assisted. Because I will not have a bunch of Karens coming up and being like, "Oh, you need to fucking blah blah." I'm like, "Nah, you need to convince the bot swarm that this extra dimension is worthwhile." And so that's how we defend the system.
Yep, yep, yep. That's fine. And again, at any point, you can rerun based on the bot swarm about which sticky uppy bits you want.
Yeah, yeah. And
Generate one of those.
over time, the top level version of the Dreamcatcher will have new sticky outy bits appear over time as we learn more about what we all want to consider when we talk about
Oh yeah,
absolute impact.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Which is what we've
And
got. Sorry.
parts might be extinguished. Some things that we cared about in 2024 might
Yeah,
turn out to be actually irrelevant.
yeah. And this is what I've got currently on the this okay, wrong word, but I'll continue using it so we don't get confused. The observation event is I care about this and reassess based on what I care about. Boom, here's a new one.
Yeah, but that's when you add the what I care about, you have forked the Dreamcatcher and you've run your version of it.
No, I don't think
That's
it is. I think it's a filter of the Dreamcatcher. We're not for it. There's this is just say
if it generated data and you were doing running this NFT grinding process, but you distorted the bot swarm away from the published top level version, you're on your own. Like,
yeah, but again that comes down to the top level version. Okay, so that top level what okay, so practically speaking, I could write a bunch of bots saying, right, you I've got to do with grammar and literacy. You've got to do with social impact. You've got to do with clicks and click through rates. You've got to do that. There's a whole bunch of bots we could write the sessions for, and then they would assess them on. That's fine. Um, but those bots are going to change over time, and the models that they're running on will change over time. And so every time you rerun this, if someone pays for it,
mm,
they're going to get a different result.
right.
Which is why I'm calling it an observation event. It's like
Yeah, but no,
when you look
hang
at
on.
it,
You make it sound like having a different result is wildly different. Like as the amount of data goes up, the NFT that gets ground out each time will stabilize. And no matter like because the sheer number of inputs that went there, it will become stable. It will wildly fluctuate at the start when it's first use, second use, third use, probably for the first 100 uses. But once a jitter becomes established as like this is a fucking good jitter, and once the selection algorithms cotton onto it as like, oh yeah, that's a really good one, it'll you can run fucking like it'll be very stable.
okay, so talking about the bots that provide the magnitudes and weighting for
Mm-hmm.
these.
When you
So
say waiting, what do you mean?
how So
The
the
division
matrix,
between the components?
right? So in dimensional space, it's like how long you are, but also what's the relative worth between those. Because when you try and rectify that into any kind of wrap up, you need the relative weighting.
You mean
Otherwise,
the exchange rate
yeah,
between, say, like love and money?
yeah,
Is that
exactly,
that's what you're
exactly.
talking about? So when
Yeah,
you
yeah,
when you're trying to collapse um, the dimensions down and try and arrive at a single dimension like US dollars, that's what you're
right.
talking about?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. The magnitude is also well what you're weighing the magnitude. If you write to a bot, a bit like you saw, it's like give me score of 1 to 100 on how much I love my spaniels. Right, it's just it will guess something, but it's like how much do I love my wife? It's different. Um, so those aren't comparable, which is back to the base point. But what it does do is give this scatter chart. So long as you've got the context of what you're aiming for at the time, this is still kind of internal. It can look at what this can do versus what your bots have assessed for each of these.
I'm
It
I'm
doesn't
sorry,
import anything external.
I'm a little bit lost. What are you promoting here? I lost sight of the question. I'm sorry.
I'm promoting essentially two functions. The first one is um, I can at any point assess using any criteria I feel as a filter, or I can ask a bot swarm to do it, or I can take off the shelf that we've provided. I can assess what the impact of this thing was. So that's down to
Right.
me.
So
The second thing,
you can interrogate it using a way of viewing things that's unique to you, right?
right, right,
And you
and
okay, and that doesn't change the ground out consensus agreed version,
yeah,
but it just means that you are observing and querying, filtering, and just lensing it, looking at it through a different lens.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly,
And
and
your purpose is because you're looking at um, maybe you're thinking about some changes to make to the top level Dreamcatcher swarm. Maybe you're looking for a way to find more value for yourself. If you can group and sort and search for things, maybe you're trying to find NFTs that you want to buy on the open market because you've got this way of looking at them that collapses the dimensional space down to a dollar value. And then you're like, well, if the market going rate is under that, buy it.
right, right,
Is that what
yeah,
you?
yeah,
That's what you're
yeah.
talking about? Yeah.
It's a little bit
Okay. So
like arbitrage.
in that case, then observation is definitely different. Um, that's that doesn't change the structure of the NFT. That you're free to run those calculations anytime you like.
I think also the fact of that, what you've observed, goes back into the pool of stuff that you can consider, saying, "On a second, this guy is just wondering whether what you've done has any use in
Hmm.
Africa when it's
If
in being
yeah,
used in trading."
if they chose to share it as
Yeah,
well,
yeah,
right?
yeah, sure, sure.
Right.
And there's a separate process for putting in external information, which is not automatically generated. And it's like, okay, so
Right. Right.
so this, the second
Ah,
part.
fuck. Hey, and I was wondering, I was wondering how to show demand because this is a jitter as it is, but there's things that people want it to be where they would, like there's a distorting force
Mhm.
on this NFT that wants to move it to that's the demand, like particularly if it landed close to something. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like, and you're sort of like, there's something that bends those lines to try and pull it over. Because especially if there's like a lot of escrow dollars sitting, like, just outside the line, like just over here.
Hmm.
it would
Uh,
bend some of those lines towards it, because you want to present that, you want to be able to show the demand in this space as well.
you're right. You're right. This is interesting. So, it's
And so
almost
you
like
should be able to view multiple NFTs in the same space, and they would be distinct, but they would have some similarity, and they might, like, they would have distance to each other, particularly, in the dimensions that they
oh yeah,
represent. And so you could sort of, because right now, any idiot can make an NFT on the Ethereum chain, and it's different just because someone said so. But in
yeah,
impact space, the difference is actually assessed by a bot swarm. And so you could end up with a grind process that merges two NFTs together, because they're so similar and so close that they just, enough changes were made that they just collapsed on to one another. Or you can have enough internal forces pushing them apart that they pop out another two.
uh, yeah, yeah.
And then you can, what I wanted to show was a video play button where you can play an NFT over time, as you can see all these calculations unfurl, and you can watch the NFT be built over time, and then you can watch NFTs nearby to it. This could perhaps be the observation you speak of, where you say, now show me this one and this one and this one, and then show them over time and show their relative interactions or movements towards or away from each other as the usage and the contribution changes.
Right, and this speaks quite closely, not perfectly, to remember I said there's three things. There's internal, and then there's the kind of peer to peer. The peer to peer really is given a vector space. What's the proximity? And if, for example, hey, I've built this wheel, it's great for grinding corn, and some other guy goes, I could fit that in a car, and he's got the axle, and he just doesn't have wheels. There's a proximity to these that could be helpful in terms of well, actually, we could combine them. So
Yeah, and there's a like, for a time those things seem separate, and then one day some innovation comes along that combines them, and suddenly you're like, pop, oh, they go together.
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah, yeah,
and now all these multiple NFTs became one.
yeah. Um, so I think I need to do a bit more work on the naming, because um, this is more of an assessment. Given any filter that you want, you can apply that same filter to anything else at any time t based on you paying for it, and you can compare them. Comparing like doesn't actually have to be like for like, just proximity, and see if, for example, if you applied a dimension in one to another, if I was to add in, I don't know, different languages, apply a different language, that could be one vector. If I apply this, then this will be the result. Therefore, we've got something here. But the observation event is entirely down to the observer to decide what they care about, how they filter this, because this is, I think, it's really
Yeah.
very powerful. Zygon, you sound.
Why do you keep bringing up that use case of the observer? Like, what is the observer doing? Tell me about the observer. Why do they care?
The observer is looking at this at any point and saying, what was the impact of this
I know that. Yeah.
thing?
Why are they doing it?
Um, for their own reasons, perhaps. For example, someone is saying, "Oh, I cured cancer," and going, "You didn't. Let's have a look."
Right. Why?
For the
Why do
information.
you? Why do you care about this viewpoint so much?
I don't know. It just happens to be an interesting one. This
Yeah. What?
viewpoint
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. I know. Why is it interesting? Why is it interesting?
It's interesting because I think it allows you to reassess at any point in time, should you care? you can reassess, saying this dude is out there saying he cured cancer. Actually, he'd had fuck all to do with it.
Isn't that just the detective work, the detective process of the dream catcher?
Dreamcatcher doesn't do any detection.
Well, it's when someone plays around with this stuff and then goes, hey, hang on a minute. This
Right.
guy's getting attribution for this thing. And so they would submit it to
Yeah.
Dreamcatcher HQ and then
Right.
either pay for it themselves or some others, and then it would eventually get corrected.
Right. Okay. Here's a more contract thing. A concrete thing. So someone feels that they're hard done by. Um, they look at the what they got paid. Right. So there's a ledger sheet for each individual, which is
Right,
you're in debt or you've been overpaid, which is what we're talking about. It's like I
right,
think I was
right, right.
underpaid. I'm going to rerun this, and here is the evidence that the impact. I'm owed more, and I'm going to pay for the run to say, well, actually, okay, there's new information here. He didn't know that actually I was the one who gave him the idea. Now you can add that because we've got a step where you can add any external evidence
Yeah,
in order to impact future assessments,
right.
and then say, well, actually, that was my idea, not yours.
Yeah,
You've had it,
yeah,
and here's a recording to show you it was. Put that in, and then the next dispersal event, um, if there's if that evidence is incorporated, then you're going to get more money back. So it could be someone like, yeah, I don't know, you've come up with an idea, you told your mate, he went and did it. There's a lot of people involved in it, but it's still your idea. You got fuck all for it, and you go, well, hold on a second. Um, that
yeah.
impact is not what you paid me 10 quid for. It's
Yep,
actually worth a million. So
yeah.
here's the
That's
evidence for it.
okay. That's I hope that's a very common standard use case. That is expanding the knowledge boundaries of the Dreamcatcher.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, so as well as just observing it and going, oh, that's interesting. I wonder what the impact of this was.
Mm.
Really, what you're saying is, let's compare again to the second tier. Let's compare the assessment then, which gave me a payout of $10, to the assessment now, which says actually I was due $1 million. I'm going to put that into the record contribution and
Right.
say I was underpaid. And so the next time some pay event, which is the only part that really is the earthing,
Yeah.
um, it's considered. It's like, oh, okay, so maybe
Right.
you had a bigger impact on that than we thought.
Right. Yep.
So that's the Willy's thing, and you could also use it just to shits and giggles to see what the
Mm.
impact and relative
Okay.
impact is.
So
That sort of
for launch, we can have a text-based version of this NFT generation system where you can regrind NFTs
Yep.
and you can pay out money based on the information inside these NFTs, yeah?
Yeah. Getting more practical, it's the distribution of benefit, of which cash is one example.
Right, right.
It's
And so
the
you can
it's
trade,
the
you
real
should be able to
sort of thing.
trade at launch, you should be, or shortly thereafter, you should be able to trade your interest in one of these NFTs to someone else to change how the royalty flows.
Yeah, yeah. That's
Yeah.
just a matter of changing the contribution history from one person to another. It's like I
Okay.
came up with this idea.
And
I'm
you'd be
selling
able to
the
make
right to
you'd
that.
be able to make forward NFTs. So structures like this that are theoretical, that have been theorized about, if such and such a thing, if, and then people can buy it if it exists. So that's escrow.
Yep,
Yep.
yep, yep, yep.
What are the features of the Dreamcatcher are we missing that doesn't we haven't discussed in this diagram? We got escrow, we got demand,
Yeah,
we
we've
got
got
attribution,
we've got the
we got
transparency.
tradability.
Yeah, we've got the fairness and transparency because you can
Yeah,
rerun and compare.
yep.
Um, Nothing comes to mind. I think we've got everything we set
Kind
out
of
to do.
captured it, eh? Like, kind of
Yeah,
captured it. And if
I
you
think
can
the
just,
one the practical compromise I think we're going to need to do is these qualities which are used to assess these. I think we move those into helps, and then
um,
we throw some helps up, and one that's not
yeah. Look,
been asked for is a
yeah,
stuck.
the
Yeah,
we are absolutely trying to make just enough Dreamcatcher to highlight what needs doing. That's all we're trying to do.
yeah, yeah. I think we so this was the final point. 50 minutes ago, I said there's a second point. Um, I think what we need
I
to do
remember that now.
is I think we need to seed a bunch of quality assessment bots
Yeah,
with prompts, and then those
yeah, yeah,
themselves
yeah.
become helps, and then those helps can be improved. And
Yep.
also, someone asks for something to be assessed, and we don't have one, that's a stuck. And that stuck will result in the creation of a help, which is a new
Right,
bot that can now assess
right,
that.
right.
But
So
everyone's dealing with the
because
same.
because we theorize that we can mimic any multi-agent system based on the purity of our system,
Mhm.
that is to say that if anyone makes a superior multi-agent attribution system and it gains popularity, we can just absorb it,
Oh yeah,
like overnight, basically.
or they could absorb us. Yeah, if they did a good
But
enough job.
well,
Yeah,
we're the same thing. If they absorbed us or we absorb them,
yeah, it merge. Yeah, yeah,
so
absolutely. Yeah,
that seems to me like an inevitable system. What things could derail us?
mm.
Is it
uh,
inevitable, or have I just grown so in love with it that I just
um,
want to see it?
I want to say it's inevitable. It's yeah, there's all sorts of things getting there, but yes, it seems like it should happen, right?
It's got some strong pull
Yeah,
towards stability, I
yeah,
think.
yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, so we got to just get enough system up that we can make a really fucking wah wah version of these NFTs enough to show that if we did more work and had more money, we'd have the glory version soon enough, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, and so I think that the bot swarms that you make initially will be more than good enough to light the fire, basically,
Yeah,
right?
remembering that the reason I've been doing these hard cases is to um, show out all the rats and
Mm.
collapse it down to something really simple, like
Yeah.
number of times a
Right.
piece of code has been
Right.
used.
Right. And the I just want to talk briefly about the intrinsic value of one of these things. Now, when you mint an NFT on Ethereum, it costs you like, fucking $20 or whatever because of
Mm,
the amount of computational resource and expense and scarcity that went into producing it.
mm,
These things will actually be quite expensive in terms of AI credits for the big ones
mm,
because I could easily imagine that even a half pi popular NFT costing about $5 worth of botswarm credits to calculate this object, right? And so that's got intrinsic value in it. You don't want to waste it because like you burned resources to generate that data, and it's got a blockchain like ability because you can't you can't like that resource is burned and you can't make another one without burning a similar amount of money.
mm.
Like it's a form of value that's like proof of work but proof of intelligence. Like it's a proof of AI work. Like you
Mm.
you have to have burned that many credits to make something like this, right? Like
Mm.
that's I think that's a cool thing. It feels like Bitcoin. It's just raw cost. It was raw cost. Bitcoin does it for wasteful reasons. We did it for intelligent reasons, but ultimately the heavy lifting remains the same. Um,
Yeah,
anyways, there was
there's a few things there, but probably not for now. I need
yeah,
to think about.
yeah. Okay, all right. So I guess we'll just carry on our merry way then. It sounds like we're about to converge.
Yeah. So the next thing I want to try is so I pushed, I don't know, 40 minutes before this call.
Hmm.
Um, I'm quite happy. I don't think anything we said uh, um, changes anything there, although I'll have a look
Okay.
at some of the terminology.
Okay.
Um, the next thing I want to do is to actually stress test it by creating um, a bunch of drone bots, each of whom are only interested in one dimension, and
Right.
uh,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and also being a help. You can roll back and saying, well, at this point, this drone said this. Is that still true? And also people who have helped to improve how we
Right.
assess this. Um, so a bunch of drones. I think the architecture I think really works.
Yeah.
I'm going to do a bit of a flow diagram just to prove it to myself, but it feels great because what you've got is like effectively three three modes of operation. The first one is in the creation of helps and their improvement.
Yeah.
Um, the second one is the consumption of helps
Yeah.
and the record of that. And the third one is in the distribution of benefit or visualizing
Right.
hypothetical benefit at any time.
Right. Yeah. That's pretty nice.
So I'm quite well. We'll stress test it. We'll see.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll get the substrate of the platform up, and then when you start chucking this load at it, I'll just spend my time tuning it to make sure it can run the load effectively, and at the same time, I'll learn a bit about what you've been doing with the bot prompting, and then we can get a first sort of a shaky ass version up that's end to end Dreamcatcher.
Yeah,
I think.
yeah. And interesting enough, the way it's been built or is being built is what we all always wanted: the Dreamcatcher, improving the Dreamcatcher, because
That's
the
the key.
Dreamcatcher is
Yeah.
bots, and bots are just helps.
Right. Right.
The only substrate that is movable is the system, your stuff.
The
That's not.
blockchain.
Yeah, I'm not considering that as a help. That's like
Nah, that's a little bit
basics.
different,
Yeah,
but yeah. But it does feel like that system can be stabilized because it has far less scope than it ever did before and
yeah,
can be like considered feature complete. So,
yeah.
yeah. Okay, I better
All
go,
right.
but
Yeah.
that is very,
No
very,
worries.
very interesting.
Yeah, cool. I know it's late your time. It was very, very helpful you
I'll check it up right
putting
now.
that video. That
Yeah,
was
I'll check
brilliant
it up right
because
now.
yeah,